and then I'll give you the thumbs up when we're actually on.
Awesome. So if the clerk could call the roll.
Chief Justice Garrett Butler,
Here.
Deputy Chief Justice Jacob Armstrong,
Here.
Associate Justice David Ozinga,
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh, here.
Associate Justice Tala Salem,
Here.
Associate Justice Trinity Sickles.
Here.
And then for the three that are here presenting.
Okay. Treasurer James,
Here.
Jeff Pawlowski,
Here.
Chief Elections Commissioner Ford.
Here.
All right.
Awesome. So at this time, we'll go ahead and move into the case for the plaintiff, which in this case will be Jeff. So you have 10 minutes to present.
Okay, thank you very much for having me this evening. I'm just going to kind of go over the appeal that I submitted, and I do have a few additional questions. I think we're appealing two different items in this case. The first is whether we actually broke the rule. The rule states that no faculty or staff member can utilize university resources to support specific candidates. This shall include, but is not limited to, email listservs, resource rooms, room reservations, and finances. This shall not be interpreted to restrict the ability of any faculty or staff member to publicize the dates and times of the general election, or to encourage voter participation in the general election, provided that no suggestion is made to encourage voting for any specific candidates. By the wording of the rule, we clearly didn't do this. We suggested that people vote, and we suggested that one of the senators was not representing his constituency fully. So I think that on that case, I don't think that we actually broke the wording of the rule. The second thing that we would like to have you all decide is, based on that concern, we don't believe we're in violation, and our funding should be restored. So back to number one, we also, as I said in the appeal, we recognize that the spirit of the rule might be that faculty and staff should not support or campaign against any specific candidates. I feel like if that's the rule, if that's the spirit, if that's what the Student Government Association is intending, it's very easy to clearly write that and state that in the rules. Unfortunately, it's not written that way. I think it's really important to note that when we met, this happened, the timeline I think is a little bit important. This post was made on April 1st. I think that the screenshot of that post was made on April 2nd, as best as I can tell. We met with Treasurer James and Senator Thompson on the 4th of April, so Monday. It was posted on a Friday. Picture was taken on a Saturday. We met with them on a Monday. And at that meeting, we were told that there was some posts, or we were told that there were posts on Facebook that some senators felt were objectionable. We were not told that we had broken any rules. We were not told that there was an allegation that we had broken any rules, but that people found them objectionable. We immediately altered the post. We were not aware of the rule. We didn't want to create a problem for ourselves. We were trying to work with SGA to fix this issue, but we immediately took it down. And we were working with SGA in good faith to try and explain our case and get our funding restored. ShiftSpace has been funded by SGA for 14 years. This is the first time that we've had a significant cut, and 65% is a huge cut to this group. When we met with SGA, when we met with Senator Thompson and Treasurer James, they told us, and this was the first time that we'd heard this in 14 years, that SGA wanted to provide seed money, but they wanted groups to find alternate funding. We had never been told that before. And so funding for the arts, as you may have seen in the news, is very difficult to find. We seem to be cut at every turn, frankly. So we hadn't been pursuing that. But when we met with them on the 4th, we immediately started talking with Foundation and with others and had started to work on a plan to try and come up with that funding. I think that this, according to what I received from the election commissioner, or the memo that they sent, this was filed on the 5th, so the day after we met with Treasurer James and Senator Thompson. And then it was sent to Senator James, I believe, on the 5th. So he actually had this in hand, or should have, before we went to the open forum on the 6th with Faculty Senate. At that meeting, I would also like to point out that of the members present, I don't remember the exact count, but I believe it was 14 senators voted to restore the funding from your reserves. 4 voted against. I can't remember if there were any abstentions. Now that number may be a little bit different, but it was almost a 3-to-1 margin of students in SGA that wanted to support ShiftSpace for 1 more year to give us time to work this out. So we felt really good about that. We felt, we had taken care of an issue that was brought to our attention. We had successfully talked with the senators and explained our case. We thought everything was dealt with, and the students were very pleased, and we were working on trying to get that alternate funding started. Obviously, we can't replace $43,000, I think, in overnight. Our funding is not that great. But then this came to us the following Monday. So as you can imagine, we were a little bit shell-shocked by this. Let's see, just moving on with the rest of this. I know my time's probably getting short. I question whether there's no other action that can be taken. Complete cutting of funding for an infraction of the rules seems pretty severe and harsh, especially when the group was trying to remedy the situation. I understand from your advisor, Mr. Fonseca, that there's the rules don't really state that there's any other option other than removal of funds completely. That seems like something that you all should address. I think that's a pretty harsh penalty for any student group, not just ours. Student group, organization, it seems like there should be some sort of mechanism to tell people, hey, you've broken a rule, you need to fix that. I can certainly see if we had said, no, we're not going to change it, we're not going to do anything different, that penalties can be very harsh. But this is pretty harsh. This will, the 65% cut to our funding would cripple the gallery. It would cause us to probably have to lay off the gallery manager that we have who helps the students to run the gallery. This will obviously close the gallery. And I think that that's an injustice to the students for the university. And I think that it's something that you all have the power to fix. And I would like to see you do that. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be, if we broke the rule and you find in favor of the Elections Commission that we broke the rule, then certainly if you want to levy a penalty, we understand that. But 100% cutting of our funding, closing the gallery that's been open for 14 years and supported by SGA seems very, very harsh. And so really that's the statement that I have. And I would stand for any questions that you all have.
Awesome, thank you. So at this point, we'll have questions for the plaintiff. So we'll go by order of seniority for this as well. Please try to keep your questions to around a minute, if that's possible, coming from the justices. So I will go ahead and start. So I guess my question for you is, to what extent were you aware of your representation of the university in the things that you posted on the social media?
Yeah, with the social media posts, I was not aware that post had been made. As you can imagine, I'm not the gallery director. I'm the budget officer for the
Okay.
gallery. And I'm the director of the School of Art, Design, and Creative Industries. I'm not a huge social media user.
Mhm.
People that know me will tell you that. I actually do not care for Facebook very much. So I don't monitor every single thing that's posted by any of the groups that we have, the students that are in clubs and things that are associated with SGA and the students that are not. So it's not something that I follow. But as I said, on Monday evening, when we were told that there was something on Facebook, that was actually the first I had heard of it. And as we left the meeting and discussed amongst ourselves, the gallery manager, myself, the students that were there, what we thought and what our plan was going forward, I said, hey, they mentioned a post. If the senator was mentioned by name, it should come down. We're not here to try and antagonize people. I think it was posted, from my understanding, it was posted in a moment of frustration. The budget was released right before spring break. We had a hard time getting in touch with people to find out what was going on and what had happened over spring break. This was the first Friday when there was a gallery opening, and I think the Sunflower article had just come out. And what was happening was that the person that was posting it was sending out the Sunflower article, and a comment was made that shouldn't have been made. And so when I realized that, I asked it to be taken down. The people with ShiftSpace, the gallery manager, the students complied immediately, and we removed it. I think that's the only thing that I've heard of that was a complaint, was the one post. That's the only thing that the complaint that I received mentioned. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Am I waiting for someone to call on me?
Yeah, if you could do that, that would be great.
Sorry. Yeah,
No worries.
Armstrong, you can ask your questions.
All right. So this question may be a little convoluted. Feel free to ask me to clarify. In the memo sent by Treasurer James, the third paragraph states that when we met with department contacts in the spring regarding the changes to the student fees statute, we communicated clearly that any violation of the association's policies may result in a loss of funding. And so my question for you is, if you are aware, and I'm not asking you to be a mind reader, are you aware to what extent you and the other staff at ShiftSpace were aware of that information?
I went back and looked when I was talking with Gabriel, because I did not remember attending that meeting. And so I went back through my email, and I did get an invite for that meeting. I did find the invite from Gabriel Fonseca. I was not able to attend. I believe I was out of town. I notified Gabriel of that, and I sent the assistant director, associate director of the school in my stead, Levente Suliak. I have no doubt that they said it. It's a 107-page document. Took me a little bit to find it on the website. I searched for it a bit before I found it. And even at that point, it looks like it's 3 separate documents that are combined into one PDF. I actually had to search for keywords to find the things that were referenced, just to verify what was said in there. So yes, it's there. Did I read it or suggest that any of our staff or the students in the group read it? No, I did not. I understand that's, ignorance is no excuse for those things, but it seems like it was a new rule possibly that was added in. I couldn't really tell based on the statements. And I do wonder, I think that, basically what Treasurer James said in that memo was that the people who were there were told, if you violate any of our rules, you may lose funding. Well, may and will are 2 different things. I don't believe that, I wasn't at the meeting, but I question whether, all of those things were explained and stated that if you do this, you may lose funding. If you do this, you may lose funding. I understand that. Policies and procedures are important. The reason we post them is so people can look things up and see. But I've been a university employee for 22 years. I've never read the complete policies and procedures manual for the university. When I run afoul of a policy or procedure, someone tells me, I look it up and then I correct my behavior. I don't get fired over that, unless it's a severe thing, right? But 100% cut of our funding, that's kind of like getting fired. So I think usually with these things, there's an opportunity to, fix the issue. And that would be the concern that I have with this.
Thank you. That's the only question I have at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, I am next, but I do not have any questions for you. So it goes on to Justice Ozinga. Do you have any questions?
Howdy, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, can you all hear me well?
Yep.
Oh gosh, I just kind of a really basic trivial question for you. How long have you personally been a part of the ShiftSpace program?
Well, I've been a faculty member at Wichita State since the year 2000. Staff member and then became a faculty member. So ShiftSpace, I believe the first time that we as a department requested funding was in 2008. I attended a number of the ShiftSpace exhibitions in 2007, the year before we applied for funding. From 2008 on, I've attended lots of ShiftSpace events. I try and go to support our students and the students across the university. I became the budget officer 5.5 years ago, maybe almost 6, when I became the director of the school. So I've been involved with the request for funding for the last 5 to 6 years as director of the school, as the budget officer. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just curious about that. I had one other small question for you.
Sure.
About how much would you say, so you've been around for a good chunk of time for this ShiftSpace. About how large do you think it's grown in the past couple of years?
Well, that's a little bit difficult because we're coming out of this pandemic, right? ShiftSpace has been at various locations. It was down near the Warren Theater downtown for a number of years. It was over on Commerce Street for a number of years when Groover Labs was opening. We saw an opportunity to move, and we're able to move to a much larger, much better space for the same rent, which was very fortuitous. That we actually moved into ShiftSpace about, I think, 2 months before the university, maybe 3 months before the university pushed everything to be remote and would not let us meet in person. So we had a significant challenge there. When we were on Commerce Street, the last full year that we were in operation before we moved and before the pandemic, we were seeing around 1,000 people every final Friday, especially in the summer. Well, in the summer and the spring when the weather was nice, in the fall, we were seeing around 1,000 people come through ShiftSpace. In the winter months, that dropped off. Actually, back at that time, I don't think we had very many summer events because the funding was only a 9-month position. But at some point in that, probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, somewhere in that range, the gallery manager at that time had requested additional funding from SGA to be able to be open over the summer and do programming. And SGA supported that and gave us additional funding so that we could be open year round. Some of the differences with the old location and the new location is that we're part of Groover Labs within their buildings. So there's an awful lot of people that come in and out of there every day. They have events there for the city. They have, I think Kristen was telling me that the governor has been to ShiftSpace twice. Local dignitaries, people from the city council and things like that have been at ShiftSpace because they're at Groover Labs. So we have a phenomenal space with a great outreach for students to be able to reach people in the community. So I think our numbers have been a lot lower since the pandemic, but we're just now starting to come back out of that. Mask mandates have been lifted. I think we're going to see more people in the future. So your question was, how long have I been involved and kind of how much have I been involved, I believe, and that hopefully kind of answers your question.
Yes, sir, that's perfect.
say
I was
more
just
if you
curious
need
about
more.
growth and whatnot. Thanks,
Yeah,
sir.
no no problem.
Yep, that's my only question for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Justice Tala, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do have one question. So you've only been funded by SGA, or is there like any like other like funding source?
Up to this point, it's been funded by SGA exclusively. The School of Art, Design, and Creative Industries does not, we don't have enough budget to have enough faculty the way we should. So we've relied on SGA's funding of the gallery and the position. The school helps as much as we can. We certainly help cover the costs of some things that happen. Sometimes there's receptions that we help cover the cost of. We help cover the cost of printing for things. We posters and things like that we cover. But we fortunately have not had to use our budget to cover ShiftSpace because we've had a great partner in SGA. It's not to say that we couldn't, but once again, as I've said earlier, funding for the arts is very low. It's very difficult to come by that funding. So we were very pleased when ShiftSpace decided to fund us back in 2008, and we've enjoyed that. Now, we were told that, again, we were told this year for the first time that we needed to find alternate funding, and we've started that process. We have good community support. We have a donor that's come on who's paying, I don't know what you call it, an honorarium or a stipend for a student to be involved with ShiftSpace. So we've diversified a little bit of the funding there. The funding goes basically to cover the rent, and it goes to cover the gallery manager, which is a half-time position, and it funds a couple of students to work with ShiftSpace. It doesn't cover any of the programming. So Kristen Beal, who's the current gallery manager, applied for a grant this year to bring in a visiting artist. She got a Kansas Arts Commission, I believe, grant that helped cover that cost. And they brought in a visiting artist from Brooklyn. Actually, I think she's moved to Pennsylvania now, to start a new tradition, which was the homecoming parade. And so we found grant funding to cover those costs. So we, I guess, have started the process of diversifying, not because we were told we have to, but we were trying to bring more opportunities for students. But we'll be looking for those that funding in the coming years if we're going to be cut, if our funding is going to be cut. Currently, I believe, just this isn't part of the appeal, but just so you all are aware, I think our funding is at $67,000 roughly for the year. It was cut to 23. The 65% cut it to 23,000. We appealed that to SGA, and we were granted from reserves. 100% of our funding was restored for next year, but after that, we'll be back to the 23. So they gave us 1 year to try and make a change and come up with something, and we were working on that. But there's no way that we can find $67,000 by July 1st. So in all likelihood, if you all don't rule in our favor, the gallery will be closed. So did I answer your question? Probably more than answer it.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Trinity, do you have any questions?
Hello. Yes, I do have one question for you. If SGA were to accept your appeal and continue the funding, how would you ensure that this wouldn't happen again?
Well, I think I would have to do very little, frankly. I don't think this will happen again. I think this will be a great instance for a lot of student groups and organizations across campus. I hate to be an example for others, but I think, especially if you cut it 100%, I think you're going to see that there's very little resistance there from organizations, at least publicly. So, but I would ensure that the director knows what the rules are that will affect funding. I would make sure that the students know who work with ShiftSpace, and anybody who's going to post to our social media channels would know that this is inappropriate and that it's going to be not a good thing if it happens. Personally, that's not the way I operate. I was very frustrated, frankly, with the situation. The senator in question had ample opportunity to talk to me, but never contacted me about the funding. I was certainly very frustrated that after 14 years, the SGA didn't seem to know that we were a group, that they thought we were an RSO. We've never been an RSO. We've never asked for funding as an RSO. So the fact that that was unclear was very frustrating to me. And frankly, that seems to me that that's what led to this whole situation. If you look at the transcripts from the budget meeting, the student fees meetings, there were questions about whether we were an RSO or an organization. They asked questions of the gallery manager when she was there to present, but they didn't ask it clearly to say, are you applying as an RSO or an organization? She didn't know that there was a question about that, or there was a misunderstanding, because we've never applied as an RSO. So the fact that they thought we were an RSO led to the fact that they were going to cut our funding. If they had understood that we were, once again, as we had 14 times in the past, applying as an organization, maybe they still would have cut our funding. We don't know. But I don't know that they would have. We've always had a really good relationship with SGA in the past. We've always had senators that have wanted to cut our funding. There's always been people that have wanted to for other things, and that's fine. Everybody has that right. But we have always seemed to enjoy a really good relationship with the majority of the SGA senators. So, and we did, again, as I said earlier, we did this year. We had 14-4, I think. Gabe can certainly correct me if I'm incorrect on those numbers, voted in favor of the funding. So, okay. Sorry, I give long answers. I apologize. I'm a faculty member. I have to over-explain.
Awesome. So that's kind of the end of questions for you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now we're going to move on to questions for our respondents, so the treasurer and the commissioner. So we'll go by seniority as well for this one. And so I'll go ahead and start that off, and then clerk will announce everyone else. So the first, and then also each justice, if you could just go ahead and ask your question for both people. If you have a question for both people, go ahead and just do that back to back. So that's how we'll do that. So for Treasurer James, I have a question about just how you are applying these rules. And really what my question comes down to is, if you normally take a one and done approach to rules, is there no process for departments coming back into departments or groups coming back into compliance before you make a decision to end a funding?
Yeah, so we've never had to do this before. This is the first time we've utilized this through this new process of student fees. And I think, to answer your second question, this is the process. The idea that we allow every community member a chance to appeal any decision made. That's the process that is available, and it's being utilized right now. So I think that, to answer your question, the hearing that we're sitting in is the process that either university departments that get the one and done cut, they have this opportunity just as every other community member to argue that they feel they should receive their funding, and I guess argue also whether or not the cut was justified.
Okay, thank you. So that's my question for the treasurer. And then I have a question for the elections commissioner. That question is, find it. So, there's been some question on the rule and how it was applied to the situation. How, and I don't know if you can do a perfect job of representing this, but what was going on in your mind as you were thinking, did they violate this? Were you thinking that they violated the spirit of it, or do you think that they violated the literal language of it? Why do you think they violated the wording of that rule?
Yeah. So when we were called into our meeting, we all had discussed what was going on. Gabriel had showed us the screenshot, and we kind of discussed between amongst the three of us. And the rule, states that it's up to us. It's up to the Elections Commission how we feel if they have broken the rule or if they haven't. But we feel that it's within both, within the spirit and the literal stating of it. It's just, it states that you shall not be using any form of anything that you own as an entity or use as an entity to say anything about what's going on. Now, if they were to say, here's when the election's going on, here's how to vote, where to vote, here are the dates and times, then nothing would have been against our rules. But since there was a clearly state of a senator's name, we felt that within literal and spiritual that they had broken the rule.
And why is it, just for follow-up, why do you think it breaks the literal wording of the rule?
Let me pull up my notes really fast. So it states that no faculty or staff member can utilize university resources to support specific candidates. With that stating support, you can automatically think that means to not support, to obviously state these are why we feel you should not be voting against. This includes but shall not limit to, and so that's where we found social media, obviously social media being the biggest form of communication that we use in our generation today, and where that can be added on, and it's not stated, but it says it's not limited to.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you for your answer.
Justice Armstrong, do you have any questions?
I do. This first question is for Treasurer James. So in your memo, or let me back up, I believe rather it's in the Election Commission memo, they reference Article 9, let's see here, I've got it right here, Chapter 5, Section 6, Activities of Third Parties. And that's the one where it states that no faculty or staff member can utilize, so on and so forth. And one article that I didn't see referenced in your memo is in the previous article, 8, Association Funding and Regulations. And I was just curious on whether or not you feel one section of it could have applied in this case, and if so, whether you considered it. And that section is Chapter 6, Organization Appropriations Processes, Section 7, Accountability of Funding. And that basically, to summarize, if you'd like me to read the whole thing, I can, because I know we didn't all print it out. But it basically implies that there are a variety of options available to the treasurer, and it leaves it open beyond the option stated by saying, or other sanctions issued by the treasurer of the association. Go ahead.
Yeah, so glad you brought that up, because the organization appropriations are strictly for RSOs. At the very beginning, just to also add some clarification, during the student fees process, I did ask the question, what is the difference between you being ShiftSpace and an RSO? The answer was, we are an RSO. So with that, I chose to originally pay for the gallery and have them use the organization appropriation process, which is a separate process for funding. But when they came to Senate, they argued that they are not an RSO, they're a university entity, using the words of Kristen Bill. So they are ineligible for the organization appropriation. So I'm unable to use that ruling in this process since they are student fee funded. That stamps them as a university department because no RSOs are eligible for student fees. So thus being in this process of student fees, you are a university department entity. So you're not able to use those rules under the organization appropriation process. You're bound to the rules of the student fees process, if that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but it sounds like the response was that section would have applied in a world where they had RSO status. Given that they are not an RSO, it doesn't apply, and so we're left only with Chapter 3 eligibility for appropriation. Any entity which is not in compliance shall not be eligible. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question at this time.
Okay, I do not have any questions, so this goes on to Justice Ozinga.
I currently don't have any questions for you. Thank you.
Justice Salem.
I also don't have any questions.
Justice Sickles.
I also don't have any questions.
Awesome. So if that's all we have for questions, I want to just say that the public hearing is over. Thank you all for joining. If you joined us on YouTube, thank you, Jeff, for being here. Yes.
You have to do the 3-minute closing parts for both sides as well. Then you can.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I totally missed that.
You're all good.
Thanks for interrupting me. Okay, so at this time, we're going to have a closing for both sides. Since we just asked the respondents questions, if one of you would like to speak, you can. If not, fine. So at this point, we'll just have Jeff do kind of a 3-minute wrapping everything up.
So do you want me to go first or do you want them to go first?
You'll go first.
I would think that I would get the final word as the plaintiff, wouldn't I? I'm sorry, what was that again?
So with the process we have, you don't have a final word now.
Okay, all right. Well, then I'll just say what I need to say. I think again, even with Treasurer James's comments, I think the is whether we're an RSO or not. It seems like I think that this change with organizations and RSOs and the funding is also new, I believe. I could be wrong on that. Again, Kristen Beal, when she spoke with requesting support before the fees committee, was not understanding that they didn't realize we were an organization. Once again, I want to reiterate, we have never applied for funding as a student organization, as a registered student organization. We have had a registered student organization a few times. The students have come together and formed a group, but since they're not eligible for funding, they don't typically do that. We've always asked for funding as an organization. So when Kristen said that we were an RSO, that was beyond the question. We'd never been, we didn't know there was a distinction between the group and the RSO. So, we apologize for that, but if this is a new situation, it feels a little hard that we would be held accountable. I really question whether this is the best option for getting somebody to come back into compliance. I think that, if there's a problem, if somebody breaks the rules, there could very easily be a notice sent that you're in violation. We feel that you're in violation of this rule. Please correct it in X number of days, or we will remove your funding. that seems like a much better way to get compliance than just cutting funding completely with, an option of having to go to the Supreme Court of SGA to try and get it restored. And that's normally how life works. I, as a faculty member, don't walk into my classes on the first day of class and say, here is my 107-page syllabus. You're responsible for understanding all of the rules within that syllabus. And if you break any of the rules at any time during this semester, I will flunk you summarily. And then you can go through the process to appeal your grade. That's not reasonable. That's not a reasonable process. So, I would say if the court wants to, if the court finds that we did violate the rule, which I still question whether we did, literally, I don't think we did. But spirit, yes. If the court finds that we do, then levy a punishment that's appropriate. One comment was made in frustration about a senator. It didn't affect his election. He was reelected. He was elected into an at-large position. I don't know. We have no idea of knowing how many students actually voted against him because of that post. I doubt very many. But it doesn't seem like, and again, we took it down immediately. It doesn't seem like this is a rule that should cut funding and cut a position that has done an awful lot for the students of this university. I think that's rather harsh. And I would hope that you would agree. So I would ask that if you're going to impose a penalty, then figure out what that is and we'll take it. But this seems incredibly harsh and frankly kind of punitive for 100% funding to be cut over one comment made on social media. I question about this if I had made a comment,
Jeff.
an offhanded comment to somebody and it was overheard, would that also be a break of this rule? So
Jeff,
yeah,
that is
it was
time.
my time up. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And then for the respondents, if you'd like to present this time, you can. I don't know if one of you would be able to represent both sides or if you even want to, but you both can have a chance to speak now.
I don't have anything unless Senator James has, or Treasurer James has anything.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing real quick. I think that the argument of our 107-page bylaws and constitutions, no one is able to read it all through it. We held sessions to allow the departments that are going to be utilizing them to come listen to us explain them. And we heard that there was representation from this plaintiff there. Obviously, you don't have to read all 107 pages if we're explaining it to you, especially the part that we're discussing today. So I think that argument is invalid. I also believe that, the appeal process that we're using right now, that is the levy that you can use. You have the ability to appeal any decision made, and that's what we're doing right now. So I think that this is the quote unquote notice that you got allowed you to come here today to speak on behalf of the gallery and on behalf of your funding allotment. So that's all I have to say for my side.
Awesome. Thank you. So Advisor Fonseca, I think I missed anything before I can go ahead and close this since I did that wrong last time?
Nope, you're all good. You covered everything. So you can begin the closing.
Awesome. So thank you guys for being here, for joining our YouTube. Jeff, thank you for being here, for Mr. Ford and for the treasurer. Wait, sorry, I got that wrong. Commissioner Ford and Treasurer James. The public hearing is now adjourned and the court will enter into private deliberations. A final decision will be rendered when the deliberations are over. The court will stand in recess until all guests leave and the live stream has been turned off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I only
One
messed up a
second.
few times.
Oh, hold on one second.